One library card in Saskatchewan will give you access to all the materials across the province. This is done through more than 300 municipal and regional libraries. Right now, regional libraries are struggling when it comes to funding, they say, because the provincial regional grant pool is not increased with the CPI. The Palliser Regional Library has started cutting databases like Ancestry to try and save money. Arwen Rudolph is the director of that branch, and she joins us now to share more. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, can you explain the current situation and some of this shortfall and how it's affecting the library?
Yeah, sure. The library, over the past 15 years, unfortunately, we have seen a stagnation of the funding that we're receiving from the provincial government. Over that similar period, and you know how much the CPI went up over COVID especially, but so we've seen almost a 40% increase in the consumer price index, and unfortunately, the regional grant pool in that same period has only increased 13%. And so we've had a lot of years with a 0% increase, and it's caused this increased funding gap year after year. So even though it's not as bad or as sudden as a sudden large cut over time, it's going to cause the same situation where we're not going to be able to afford to keep running.
What has that meant for the branch?
Yeah, so the regional library, we've had to start cutting some of our databases. For example, you mentioned ancestry.com. And right now we're at the situation where we're sort of going for the low-hanging fruit, the databases that, although for the people that use them, they're really important, they don't have a high usage, but we're running out of places to cut. And so we are getting to the point where we're going to have to go for something that's really popular and really well used. For example, like Hoopla, which is an ebooks and e-audiobooks service that we subscribe to, and that's seeing year over year 8 to 10% growth. And that might be the next thing that we have to cut in order to afford to keep operating.
In Arwen, libraries were front and center in 2017 after major cuts. There were rallies at libraries all over the province. Um, when you look back at that, what are you thinking based on what's happened in the years since?
Yeah, so that was one of those sudden cuts. The
Hmm.
government announced they were cutting us almost 60%, and most of the regional libraries said, "Well, I mean, we can't keep operating this province-wide library system when you cut our funding 60%." So, but then luckily that funding was restored. But since then, unfortunately, we haven't seen any increase to our funding. It's sort of kept pace with this 0, 0, 0 year after year. Um, and as I said, over time, that's going to result in the same thing. And after those cuts, the government, they were like, whoa, we're going to do a sector review and we're going to come up with this plan for regional libraries. And we did this plan. And one of the first things on that plan, the top priority, was sustainability. And unfortunately, I feel like even though that is one of the top priorities that came out of that plan, we have not found a solution for sustainability. This is not sustainable.
Arwen, I want to just read to you a statement we received from the Ministry of Education, the government of Saskatchewan's representative in this file, and it says funding, this is a quote, funding for public libraries reviewed annually as part of the provincial budgeting process for 25-26. Palliser Regional Library received 725,656 from the Regional Library Grant Pool. This represents a 5.6% increase since 2015-16. Beyond direct operating grants, the province continues to make significant investments in library services. This includes funding for internet access, in-province shipping of library materials and services for people with print disabilities. It goes on to say another line there, but I'll leave it there. What's your initial, I guess, reaction to that from the government?
Yeah, that's more or less the standard response that we get. And yes, they do support a lot of library systems, but that's not an increase and it's not keeping up with what they need to do year after year. I mean, costs go up, costs increase, in particular for regional libraries, which are the backbone that make our rural library system work. And so, yes, it's great that you're supporting libraries in these other ways, but you also need to support the regional library system.
And for this year, you mentioned, things like Hoopla and online services are increasing in interest, and you're seeing other, I'm sure, increases in different areas of the library. So people aren't using the library less. What's your message to the government as far as how people are accessing the library and how that's changed over the past maybe decade or so?
Yeah, so our online services are exploding in popularity. I mentioned the 8 to 10% increase in Hoopla. Libby or Overdrive, which is our other ebook provider, they're up 15%. Um, but overall, our circulation is still increasing. So it's not that, hey, everybody's moving online and they're not using physical materials anymore. Over year, we're still increasing. Our active patrons are up over last year. You mentioned the province-wide library system. So one of the things regional libraries do is we have a courier system. We ship books, and that is up 5% over last year. So it's not that usage is going down, it's the opposite. Usage is going up. And unfortunately, online materials like ebooks and e-audiobooks are more expensive for us to purchase than physical books. We get many more circs out of a physical book, and it's much less money. And so we're really being squeezed because the increase in popularity in ebooks is forcing us to spend more and more on items that we don't get the same cost per use for.
And what about how your regional library is being accessed for things and day-to-day programming and how that may have been different than years past, maybe even since the pandemic?
Yeah, so actually, in-person usage is rebounding to pre-pandemic levels, and I think one of the things that we do really well and we can offer in public libraries is in-person programming or even online programming. And again, that's one of the things that we might have to look at cutting. Regional libraries provide region-wide programming such as Summer Reading Club for all of our rural branches in particular. And without funding for regional libraries, it makes it really hard for us to continue that.
Arwen, I really appreciate your time this morning and letting us know about the situation that you're facing. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for talking to me with me.
You're very welcome.